Mishna 37a. Hashochet es a misukenes, one who slaughters a misukenes. So this will be the topic for the next little while. You have to slaughter an animal that was alive. So the question is, yeah. So when you go and slaughter, Jules, make sure that if you want to eat that animal, it's got to be alive. So a misukenes, sakana is a danger. So it's an animal that's at danger of living. The question is, such an animal, how do you know when it was alive? It's certain signs that you can guarantee it was alive when you shechted it. So we're going to go learn more about it in 20 minutes from now. But the Mishnah says, so simple words are that until there's a certain jerking the animal does, a natural jerking that shows you that it's alive, the yadu beregel, with its hand and with its foot. We'll see different definitions from later Amoraim about how much jerking you really need, and then the question is going to be: do they argue or do they agree with this definition? But simply understood that it has to jerk. Its arm, its hind leg, its foreleg.
Doesn't have to go to the speech.
No. Yeah. Could be if the speech is not good, and then you'll become a misukenes. It's a risk every Shabbos I have, So Rabbi Eliezer Omer, I risk my life for the people. So Rabbi Eliezer Omer, he says daya in zinka. So it's enough if you do some kind of if blood comes flying out, blood comes spurting out, so that's enough. It's like a lot of blood from the throat area, that it was alive and not dead. If it was dead, it wouldn't have such a powerful flow of blood. Amar Rabbi Shimon, hashochet balayla. Let's say you shecht it at nighttime. V'lumachar hishkim, and you woke up in the morning. See, you shecht it and you still woke up the next morning. So not dangerous. Hishkim umatzak salam leim dam. Now you found that the walls are filled with blood. Exactly what the walls are will be described, but it sounds like it's the outer area, not the area where you shecht it, but right the area outside that area is full of blood. Sheira shezinga, that it had that powerful letting out of blood. Ukemidas Rabbi Eliezer, and that's what Rabbi Eliezer said, that it has to be zinka. It has to have this strong flow of blood. Okay, so those are those opinions. So either a certain level of jerking or a certain level of a flow of blood. The Chachamim say achet tefarches o biyad o beregel o shetikaskes beznava. It can either jerk the hind leg or the foreleg, or it can wag its tail. So Rabbi Shimon Gamliel said you have to have both, jerking with the hind leg, with the foreleg and the hind leg. Yeah. So and the Chachamim say you have to do both, or it can wag its tail. So beznava. Echad behema daka, whether it's a thin animal, behema gasa, a fatter animal. So that's all signs of vitality. Behema daka shapash the other below zira psula. So now, let's say the foreleg goes out; it doesn't come back. So that's psula. That you don't have necessarily a sign that it was alive. Sounds like that might just be like a natural reaction, but not a real jerking and sign of vitality is forward and back. So, no, when the doctor, they whack you on the knee,
yeah,
and they convince you that it's good for you or something like that. So they have to see rather other here.
They don't just understand.
What do you say?
They don't stand in front of you.
Yeah, they're smart. Little do they know, you can take to the side too. So if you only go one way, that's just a natural thing that happens when the animal dies. It'll go the foreleg will just react like that. That doesn't show you any signs of vitality. So all of this is when these are all signs when the animal is getting older. Yeah, it's getting older. So it's a misukenes. It's in danger. So these are signs to help us distinguish, is it dead or is it not? If there's no reason to assume it was any in danger at all, it was a regularly living, kicking, going strong. It doesn't have to have any of these signs. These signs are only for when it's a misukenes, when it's in danger, or it's older, or it's going to die. Then you have to have these signs just to ensure that you shechted a live animal. Now, misukenes, mimai desharya, umimai teiskadatin dasira. What's the source that it's going to be permitted? And why would you have thought it would be prohibited? Meaning, we're going to tell you, by the way, you should know an animal that's alive, but it's on its way down. You should know it's okay. Right. What's the source of that? And why would you have think not that way? So we would have thought, as long as the animal's alive and you checked it, it's good. Who cares if it's alive, it's almost dead, and dead. So dead is no good, alive is yeah good. So now we're differentiating. No, there's alive, misukenes, and dead. So why would you? Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So twilight period. That's right. We'll still figure out how to do mincha marav right before. Don't worry. So they'll figure it out somehow. Yeah. Misukenes mimai desharia, umimai teiskadatin dasira. A misukenes. Okay, so how you know it's permitted, and why would you think it's prohibited? So now, basically, for a while, it's just going to be the psukim going back and forth. We're going to quote psukim that refer to what we know as the nevela and the treifa. A nevela just died. A treifa has one of the vital limbs removed. So we're going to try to say that when the Torah said nevela and treifa, it was also referring to a misukenes, and then we're going to reject it. That's the basic setup. So zos hachaya asher tochlu. So it says in Vayikra, this animal achaya that you're going to eat from all the animals. So they use the word chaya, which generally means a wild animal versus a domesticated animal. But in this case, the Gemara is interpreting to mean chaya achol v'she'enu chaya lo sochal. Only if it's alive, you could eat it, but if it's not alive, you cannot eat it. V'hamisukenes. Okay, so fine. So that's a source. Now, why would you v'hamisukenes and this misukenes, this animal, lo chaya? Now, I'll prove to you that this misukenes is not considered alive. So, who's going to tell? Why should you consider this animal as alive or not? I'll prove to you that's not alive. How am I going to prove to you that animal that's on the decline, it's at risk of dying, is considered not alive? Why would I say that? Because of the following verse. It says you cannot eat a nevela, animal that died on its own, that you cannot eat, implying implying that a misukenes you could eat. An animal that's in danger you could eat. Says the Gemara, how is that logical? What do you want to tell me? It's prohibited to eat this kind of animal that's in danger? Well, hold on. Let's think about it. If that was prohibited, then for sure a dead animal you can't eat. If an animal that's alive and you shechted it, and still because it has the status of, not fully alive, would be prohibited to eat, for sure if the animal just died, you for sure can't eat it. That's obvious. So the misukenes asira, if that would be prohibited, well, it's simple kal v'chomer. Would you, if it's prohibited when it's alive, but it's in this, twilight period, so, and yet it would be forbidden. So for sure, if it's dead, it'd be forbidden. And yet the Torah says an animal that's dead, you cannot eat. So that implies only once it's dead and it was never shechted, you cannot eat, implying that if it's twilight period and shechted, you could eat it. So now the Gemara says, 1 second. Maybe when the Torah says nevela, it wasn't only referring to an animal that's dead, it was even referring to an animal that's, in this twilight period, a misukenes. So the dilma hainu nevela hainu misukenes. Maybe nevela means a nevela and a misukenes, this endangered animal. Says or no, that doesn't make sense. Lo sakataitak. Why? It says the chsivich yamas ben behema asher hilachem leachla hanogea benivlasa laachar misa hu dekaya rachman nevela mechayim lo ikri nevela. You see in the verse that it says when the animal dies and then it calls it a nevela. So you can't tell me that a nevela refers to an animal that's endangered, about to die, when the Torah explicitly says when the animal dies, it's called a nevela. So therefore, when it says nevela, it means nevela, already dead, implying that if it was in this twilight period, so then that would still be considered alive. And if you shecht it and it has these signs of vitality, you are good to go. Okay. Fine. So now, yeah. So now it says, not so fast. Maybe Vidilma, perhaps. La'olam emalach hainu nevela. Maybe really a nevela, a animal who's dead, doesn't only mean dead, but it also means about to die. Yeah, that's what it means. You just proved to me that it says nevela when the animal's dead. So clearly it cannot refer to an animal that's alive. No, maybe you read like this. But dilma la'olam emalach hainu nevela hainu misukenes. Now, it's referring to two types of animals, the endangered one, the one that's on the verge of dying, and the one that's dead. It says these verses in the Torah, just to tell you, it just means to tell you that if you were to eat this animal when it was about to die, you'd be over a positive prohibition. If you eat it after it's dead, it'll be a negative prohibition. So that's all. So referring to the animal as an avela, so it depends. If it's dead, it'll be a negative prohibition. But if it's alive, it'll be you'll violate a positive prohibition. And I say, so we got out of that. So right now we still don't have a proof that you can eat this animal because maybe the nevela is referring to it. It says it different times in the Torah. Yeah, one's referring to it's stricter when it's dead than when it's about to die. Okay, but we have a pasuk by treifa. You can't eat a treifa, one that has a vital wound, implying that one that does not have a fatal wound and it's just on the verge of dying is permitted. Why? Well, the treifa mibai. What do you want to tell me? That a mesukana is going to be prohibited? That this animal about to die is going to be prohibited? So why did the Torah say an animal that's a treifa you cannot eat? A treifa is missing a limb. If you want to tell me the bigger novelty, tell me the bigger novelty. That a misukenes, which is not missing a limb, is prohibited. For sure, an animal that's missing a limb is for sure prohibited. The fact that it didn't say that shows me that the misukenes, the one that's endangered, or the one that's about to die, is permitted. Only a treifa is going to be prohibited. So same logic as before. The dil mahainu treifa hainu misukenes. Maybe a treifa refers to both kinds of animals, the vital wound and the about to die. V'lav or alav ba'aseh v'lo saseh. And it's the reason why it says at different times in the Torah was just to tell you that if you eat the treifa as a treifa when it's missing a wound, it's a negative commandment. And if you eat it when it's about to die, it'll be just a violation of a positive commandment. So, okay, but im kain nevela lamali. But then why does it say nevela? And it can't be both. Either a treifa includes a treifa and a misukenes, or a nevela includes a nevela and misukenes, but it can't be both. So if a treifa is referring to both, then let's do a simple kal vachomer to exclude the necessity of a prohibition about a nevela. Why? Well, let's think. If when it's alive and it's missing a limb, or it's just about to die, there's a negative and a positive violation. So then for sure when it's dead, it's going to carry over. That's more extreme. It's already dead. So there's no necessity then for an avela. So says the Dilma, maybe they're all referring to the same thing. The Dilma, hainu nevela, hainu treva, hainu misukenes. Maybe it's all referring to dead animal. All these terminologies are all referring to dead animals, or one to dead. Maybe they're all the same thing, and they're all referring to an animal that's dead, missing a limb, and about to die. And v'lav or alav b'shnei lav and v'aseh. It's coming to teach you that there are two negative prohibitions and one positive prohibition that one would violate. But really, when it says nevela and treifa, it's including a misukenes as well. Rashi explains it's referring to, let's say, a nevela that died after it was a treifa and its life was endangered. So you have all three in one. So you have an animal that is its life was endangered. It became a treifa, and then it was a nevela. So if you eat that animal, it's referring to one type of animal. It's referring to one. If you have all three of these things, so then you'll be over these three prohibitions, and that's what it's referring to. But we still don't know that a misukenes is prohibited because maybe it's included in this violation. Yeah. So right now, when it says treifa, you can't eat a treifa. A treifa is an animal that's alive but missing a limb. We're saying now it's also referring to animal which is alive. It's just about to die. Both of those are included in the treifa prohibition. And we ask, well, then what's the necessity for a nevela? The answer is when you have a misukenes and a treifa, and then you have that same animal dies, you should know you're violating three things. So, yeah, is that clear? Meaning once the animal's alive and there's a prohibition, there's no need for prohibition when it's dead. So why is there an extra prohibition for when it's dead? To teach you, if this same animal that was endangered and missing a wound, if that a limb, missing a limb, if that same animal now dies and you eat it, you'll get all the prohibitions together. We'll knock you for all three. We'll get you for all three. 2 negative, and then 1, and then 2 negative, and 1 positive prohibition. Ella mehacha, rather learn from here. The Torah says, "V'chelev nevela v'chelev treifa yaseh l'chol malacha." So the fats of a nevela and the fats of a treifa. So you could do work with it, meaning it's not going to cause impurity. You could touch it, meaning a nevela does cause impurity, but a chelev does not. However, you can eat it. So chelev nevela and chelev treifa yaseh l'chol malacha. The achal also klu, but you cannot eat it. Okay. The amar mar lemai hilchasa. So, and we asked for what halachas is being taught, meaning do not eat it. We know already. Rashi points out from the 3rd chapter of Vayikra. It says kol chelev you can't eat. You can't eat any forbidden fats. So that we know already. Now, if it became a nevela or it became a treifa, so we don't assume that the prohibition of fats leaves. It's still there. So what's the reason why this is stated? To teach you, Yavo Isser Nevela v'yachol al Isser Chelev, Yavo Isser Treifa v'yachol al Isser Chelev. So in general, we have a rule that Ein Isser Chal al Isser. If something's already prohibited, so you can't have a second prohibition on it. So the language of Rashi usually is the prohibition has nowhere to land on. There's no room for it. Sounds like it needs somewhere to land. So there are a few exceptions. If the second prohibition is more inclusive, it includes more. So let's say a person is prohibited to, what's a good example? To their, a person's prohibited to their sister, so now he gets married, right? So he's also prohibited to his sister for another reason. He's already married. Right, but he's also prohibited to everybody else. So now that's more inclusive. That's called an Isser Kollel. So now we're saying this verse is teaching you that the Isser Nevela. So you have the forbidden fats on an animal, and then it says Chelev Nevela. Now we know already that forbidden fats are prohibited even before the animal became either missing a limb like a treifa or a nevela. However, we're telling you that once it becomes nevela, then that's going to be another prohibition, even though it's already prohibited for a chelev. If you eat that chelev, you're going to get both. And it's a treifa b'yachol, it's a chelev. And same with the treifa, that a treifa is going to come, and that prohibition is going to be added to the prohibition of Chaylev. Okay, next page. Now, the Isakadav, if you want to tell me that Treifa, Hainu Misukenes, that when it says Treifa in the Torah, it doesn't only refer to an animal with a fatal wound and missing a limb, but it's also referring to an animal that's about to die. If that's true, so Lichtov Rachmana Chaylev Nevela, Yasel Lechol Melacha, the Chaylev Treifa Lo Sochluhu, so it should have just written, Chaylev Nevela Yasel Lechol Melacha. The Chaylev of a Nevela is not going to contaminate you. The Chaylev Treifa Lo Sochluhu, just tell me I can't eat the Chaylev of a Treifa. Now, it's the same Kal V'chomer as before. If something's prohibited once it's alive, it'll be prohibited once it's dead. There's more reason to permit it when it's alive, less reason to permit it once it's dead. So if the Treifa prohibition comes and is added to the Chaylev prohibition, to tell you that if you eat now the animal that's already prohibited, its fat's already prohibited, now it lost its leg. So now it's prohibited for two reasons. Chaylev, and if you eat the Chaylev, it's also with the Treifa. So if you're teaching me that, there's no need to teach me that if you eat the Chaylev of the Nevela, it's going to be an added prohibition, because that's obvious. Umame Chayim, Asi Isra Treifa, Chayil Isra Chaylev. If the animal's alive and its forbidden fat is forbidden, because it's forbidden fat, and now it loses its leg, and now that fat is forbidden for another reason called a treifa, well then, liachar misa mibayi, for sure after the animal dies, it'll be prohibited as an nevela, and there's no reason to state that. The fact that it stated it must be that when it says treifa, it's not referring to a misukenes, it's just referring to a treifa. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So that's another reason why treifa cannot be referring to a misukenes, to this animal which is alive but about to die. Because if it was, then there'd be no necessity to teach you that a fat of a nevela will be a prohibition of a nevela as well. We'll know that already from the fact that an animal that's alive, there'll be added a prohibition onto it. For sure, when it's dead, it'll be added a prohibition. Okay. Yeah. Ella midekasarachon nevela. The fact that Torah says nevela in this verse, michlal the treifa lav hainu misukenes. So the fact that it says nevela, that means that we don't use the kal v'chomer, which means that when it says treifa, it's not referring to a misukenes, an endangered, this animal that's about to die, and rather a nevela is like what we thought, animal that's dead. A treifa is an animal with a fatal wound, and a misukenes is there's no prohibition to eat it, and that is that. Okay. So these are all reasons why you would have thought this animal would be prohibited. That we say it's not prohibited. Based on these kal v'chomers, it's not prohibited. Rather, it is permitted as long as it has those signs of vitality to ensure that it was alive at the time of slaughtering. Says Rav Ashi, not so fast. Maybe when it says treifa, it means a misukenes. Nevela, the kasarachman alamali. And you keep asking, well, if a treifa is referring to a misukenes, meaning and prohibiting an animal that's fully alive, just moments before it dies. One assumption we're making until now, which is going to be very important right now. So, one assumption: when we keep saying that when an animal's alive, if it has a fatal wound, that's coming to include an animal who's alive with no fatal wound, but on the verge of death. If it's coming to include that, so the assumption is that when an animal becomes an avela, when it dies, it also had the moment where it was about to die, right? When an animal dies, it has those moments when it's about to die. So basically what we're saying is if a treifa is when it said that a fatal wound is prohibited, and now is including an animal that's about to die. Well, a nevela is just saying the same thing, because a nevela is an animal that died, but it also had that moment before it died. So now we're going to say, the way we're going to reject this whole thing is by saying treifa refers to an animal that's about to die. You keep asking me about a nevela, isn't just included in that. If that's prohibited, for sure an animal dies. Well, it also had that moment before death, and it's prohibited. We're going to answer that no. We're going to talk, when it says nevela, it's talking about one specific case where the animal was split in half. When the animal was split in half, it never had that moment before it died. It's considered died instantaneously. Yeah, so that's not including this endangered time frame. Let's say the time frame of almost dying is a day. The animal goes into hospice, gets visited by Alan Lurie. So that never happened by a nevela. So it's a totally separate prohibition because it never had that moment. So, but the ka'amris nevela the chazar kwana lamali. It's a nevela that died without ever having those moments before death. What's a case of an animal dying without the moments, without those moments? The hechidami sha'asa gistra. It's an animal that was split in half, and it never got endangered before it became a nevela. And therefore, you have to teach me that even such an animal, its forbidden fats are going to be prohibited, not only because they're forbidden fats, but also because of a nevela. I would not have known that from the earlier case. Right? Imagine, just to say clearly, imagine like this: that you have so you have an animal and it has forbidden fats, chaylev. Okay, so you can't eat the chaylev. Now the animal's alive, and then at some point now, it becomes about to die, goes into hospice. Yeah. So at that point, we're saying now there's an additional prohibition on it of misukenes in our right. So that means that as soon as an animal gets to a point where it's about to die, it has an additional prohibition called misukenes. Okay. So now the animal becomes a nevela. So 1 second. It's alive, nevela. Well, hold on. You just told me that the moments before it dies, when it's endangered, it has an added prohibition called misukenes, the prohibition of endanger, which right now we're assuming is included in the treifa prohibition. Well, every nevela is going to have that. It's alive, and dead. But before it died, it had those moments of misukenes. So you already have that prohibition. So what is the prohibition of nevela adding onto it? Now, I'm thinking now you could say it adds a third prohibition. You have chaylev, misukenes, nevela. That's interesting. The Gemara doesn't entertain that thought. I don't know why. That's interesting. But that's the point, that you're not going to get to this nevela prohibition, because as soon as it gets to almost dead, misukenes. So now we're saying, no, I need the nevela prohibition, because what if it's alive, skipping hospice, dead? When it gets cut straight in half, there just died right away. Never had those moments. So therefore, you still need the nevela prohibition. In that case, you would need the prohibition, and therefore we can still say what we were saying before. So says no such thing as not being a misukenes. Hasam nam after the lahavi misukenes porta mikame delivsak laruba. It's impossible that there weren't some moments of about to die, even when you cut it in half. The assumption was misukenes means, a few days hospice, a day hospice, not momentary hospice. But we're saying, no, that also counts as misukenes, and therefore, it really is not logical to say that, it's wrong to say that a misukenes is included in treifa, because then there's really no necessity for nevela, because even if you cut it in half, those moments before it dies, it already has that prohibition. So, okay. Now, that's one answer. Everybody's ema im kain lema chaylev nevela v'treifa chaylev chaylamali. You should just say it chaylev, nevela, treifa. Just say the fats of a nevela and a treifa. Why say chaylev twice? Chaylev, nevela, and chaylev treifa. So that we say zuhi she'ein chalba chaluk mi basara. It's referring to an animal where its chaylev is not going to be separate from its meat, meaning zuhi she'ein chalba chaluk mi basara. Its chaylev prohibition is not going to be separate from its flesh, meaning the flesh will be prohibited as well, like a treifa is prohibited, its chaylev is prohibited, a nevela is prohibited, its chaylev is prohibited. So it's coming to teach you only those cases are going to be prohibited. The yesh lecha cheres shechelba chaluk mi basara, the ezazu mesukenes. There's another animal where its prohibition of forbidden fat is separate from the flesh itself. What's that case? An animal that's about to die. An animal that's about to die is permitted, but its fat is prohibited. So it says chaylev twice, chaylev treif and chaylev to teach you that we're talking about a case where the fat is inseparable. The prohibition of fat is inseparable from the animal, which is also prohibited. They're both prohibited. What's that coming to teach you? That there's another case of an animal which the fat is prohibited, but the animal is permitted. What case is that? That's going to be a misukenes, where it itself is permitted, but the forbidden fat is prohibited. Yeah, we check the animals like that, no? It's permitted when you check it, and the fats are forbidden. Right. Yeah. I mean, 100%. Of course, every animal that's alive and shechted, it's permitted, and the chaylev is forbidden. But the point is that the Torah specified chaylev to drive the point home that we're talking about something which the animal is forbidden and its fats are forbidden, and we're coming to exclude something which is similar to this case. What's similar to this case? An animal that's about to die. It's about to be prohibited. That animal, even though it's about to be prohibited, but it's permitted, its fat is prohibited. Now, of course, animal that's shechted is permitted and the fat's forbidden. But the point is that this needed an exclusion, because you would have thought, like we just did for the last 20 lines, that maybe almost dying is also included in the prohibition. So that we say no, it's specifically singled out that it's permitted. Okay, now the Ibais Ema, another source that a misukenes is permitted, as follows. The Ibais Ema Mehacha, the Omer, it says in Yecheskel a bunch of things that he didn't do, and we're going to ask, well, of course he didn't. They're all prohibited. So what's it coming to teach us? So it says, Omer Hashem, we have Omer Hashem Elokim, Hine nafshi, my soul, lo metama, lo mituma Hine nafshi, lo mituma v'nevela v'treifa lo achalti. I didn't cause an impurity. I didn't eat nevela or treifa. Min oirei v'ad ata, from my youth until now. V'lo ba b'fi basar pigel, and meat of pigel never entered my mouth. So now what is this whole pasuk referring to? So hine nafshi lo mituma. So obviously it's not referring to that he didn't contaminate himself. He's a Kohen. A Kohen can't contaminate himself. So what does it mean he never brought impurity upon himself? Shalo here harti b'yom lavo lidei tuma b'layla. He didn't cause himself to have impure thoughts to come to a forbidden emission in the nighttime. Now here there's a question. The question is, that already is also prohibited. You can't cause yourself to have impure thoughts. So I think they point out that maybe it was unavoidable thoughts. I never even did that. I was so careful. I didn't have things, do things that would bring upon unavoidable thoughts. Of course, actively to cause yourself to have those thoughts is for sure forbidden. But yeah. Yeah, exactly. Tosa says that from the Gemara of Basra that there are three things that a person is not saved from every day. You're not spared from having thoughts of Aveira, Lashon Hara. But he never brought that upon himself. He was holy that he never had even that. So either way, so that's one. Nevela v'treifa lo achalti. Of course, he didn't have nevela and treifa. Yecheskel's talking. So it means minu orai shlo achalti basar kos me olam. He never ate meat that was a misukenes. He never ate meat that was shechted while it was about to die. He was careful. To not eat that. So we sign our Mishnah. You have to know if it's alive or dead. You have to have signs of vitality, right? So he was just careful. He was careful not to eat that. Velo ba befi basar pigel. He didn't eat pigel. Of course, he didn't eat pigel. That's prohibited. It means he never put something repulsive in his mouth. There was an animal that was questionable that had to be brought to the rabbi to permit. He was so careful. Any doubtful cases, he stayed away from. Okay, but what do you see from here? He didn't eat an animal that's a misukenes, that's endangered, because that's something which is permitted. If it was prohibited, of course he didn't do it. But you see the fact that he's saying it's an actual level of piety that he never ate that animal, that shows you the animal's alive, and yet we're showing his piety that he stayed away from it. Rabbi Nassim says what it means is he never ate from an animal that it's the parts of the animal that are gifted to the Kohen. So he never ate from an animal that its gifts were not given or separated to the Kohen. So now here's the proof. If you say a misukenes is permitted, so you understand what Yecheskel is saying. Even if it's permitted, I stayed away. That makes sense. Asira, if it's forbidden, so what's Yecheskel saying? It's forbidden, I still stayed away. Yeah, great job. We all did. So my Rabbi would say the Yecheskel. Oh, so that's showing you that is permitted. Now, other examples of a misukenes, Hekena misukenes, and here where it's a little bit of a debate. Does this agree with the opinions of our Mishnah? Remember, our Mishnah said that it has to be jerking. That was Rabbi Shimon Gamliel, a hand and its foot. And the rabbi said it has to do either or have its tail wag. So now we're going to see other opinions. So it says that either agree or disagree. Hey, Kedam Misukenes, Amar Rabbi Yehuda Amar Rav, says Rabbi Yehuda Amar Rav, it's Kol Shema Amidin Osav Eino Medes. It can't get up. You try to stand it up, it doesn't get up. So that would be a misukenes. That would have that status. Sorry, so we're not yet at what that would be considered a misukenes, the animal that can't get up. Now, Rav Chanina bar Shalma Mishmei the Rav Amar afilu ocheles bekios. Even if it's it sleeps a lot. Oh, sorry. Yeah, sorry. Not too slow. Even if it eats beams, sorry. Even if it eats beams, meaning it has the ability to bite things that are hard to bite, like beams. But still, if it's down and it can't get up, it's called misukenes. Rami bar Yecheskel Amar afilo cheles koros. Even other beams, even planks, even if it has very strong teeth, it could do that. But still, if it can't get up, it's still considered a misukenes. In Surah, they taught Besura Masni that Besura Masni Hachi. In Surah, they taught like that, but Pumpadisa Masni Hachi, they taught it in the following way: Hey, Kedam Misukenes, Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Rav, Amar Yehuda Amar Rav, Kol Shema Amidin Osav Eino Medes. Anything which you stand up and it doesn't stand, Va'afilo Ocheles Bekios, and even if it eats beams. Ryan Bar Yecheskel Amar Afilo Ocheles Koros. He said even if it eats these wooden planks, that's very, very strong teeth, which shows a level of strength, but still, since it's an animal which can't get up, or you stand it up, but it doesn't stand. So before they taught a case of it's down, it can't get up, and now it's a case where it stands, but it can't remain standing. That would be a sign of a misukenes. remember mincha is tomorrow?